Hey there, it's Mary Claire. Today's background is actually called As Good as It's Gonna Get. I'm doing some rearranging in this room because I have to do everything from my bedroom because I'm in an apartment and my kids are here. And so I've got a section for where I record and do my schoolwork and write articles and do my paper crafts. And then I've got an area where I sleep. And then I've got my library that is quite uh, extensive, especially with certain subjects. And also, the hair is going to be like this for quite a while because it's going into dreads, and they just are going to look. It's going to look awful for quite a while, but the result will be pretty amazing. So, I wasn't sure today whether to talk about the Lindsay Clancy case that everybody else is talking about, or to talk about parental estrangement again from the point of view of the Fox News supposed study that just came out, that saying that adult children are going no contact from their parents over things that aren't that important, and this is abusive to the parents and abusive to the grandchildren. I think I'm going to go in that direction, even though I do have some thoughts on Lindsay Clancy that are not the thoughts that I'm seeing online right now. But anyway, I will talk about the one that I don't get to today. But parental estrangement, that family estrangement, that's something I kind of know about. I haven't been in contact with the woman that gave birth to me, her husband, or the two step siblings that I grew up with in probably 9 years now. I also don't have any contact with cousins or aunts or uncles because a lot of these different people were in on what happened to me or provided tools or space or resources to do what was done to me. My stepsisters will claim none of it ever happened because it didn't happen to them, which is pretty typical of this kind of thing. It's often either the oldest or the youngest, but because the woman that gave birth to me has a husband that is not my father, and this was created to be this way on purpose, I'm the one that had these things kind of happen. And so, like I have said, I think in other videos, think Epstein list magnitude of what happened to me. And so that's why I don't talk to anybody. And I do firmly believe that most adult children that have cut off their parents have done it because of abuse. I don't care what Fox Noise says. I do not trust anything that comes from Fox, because if you remember the lawsuit from a few years ago where they was sued for misinformation, and they won the case because they said that they weren't actually news, they were an entertainment company. So remember that when people tell you stuff is on Fox, they themselves in court said they're not news, they're entertainment. So, if they're going to use it for a legal argument, then we can use it, right? That is what they kind of think about themselves anyway. So, anyway, this study, this very biased study, claims that parents are being cut off because of the influence of social media, of therapists. It's a therapist's fault and therapy speak, and also because of college. So they're trying to blame, as usual, these estranged parents are trying to blame absolutely anybody and anything but themselves. And that's just not cool. I mean, and it doesn't matter how many of us adult children that talk about how we're estranged because of abuse. They just don't believe it. They'll say, you don't know our stories. Actually, we kind of do. You were abusive to your kids, because if you weren't abusive to your kids, they would still be talking to you. Or we don't know why they're not talking to us. Yes, you do. Just because you weren't listening or you did not want to admit it that doesn't mean you weren't told. Those are two different things. You were told. I can guarantee you were told, because all of us have spent years trying to tell our parents what was wrong, and we only ended up cutting our parents off after they just would not admit that there was any issues, or tried to gaslight us about what happened. And most of us, even that have had horrific things happen to us, did not want to cut off our parents. That's just not what we wanted to do, because it still hurts. And I've seen a lot of these estranged parent spaces where they're talking about how it's so cruel to force grandkids to not see their loving grandparents because of adult arguments. It's not an adult argument. You abused your children, so why should you have access to your grandchildren to abuse them as well? As a parent, it is my job to not allow my children to be abused by the people that abused me. That is my duty as a parent. So of course you're not going to see your grandkids, because I have to protect them from you. And there's some of that on both sides of the family. My children are teenagers, and so sometimes they do want to see their grandma. Their grandpa died over the weekend, actually. But they do want to see their grandma some of the time. But it's complicated, because grandma is a fundamentalist Christian and judges them based on her religion rather than being able to love them for who they are. So that is difficult for them, and so sometimes they see them and sometimes they don't. I don't stop my children from seeing their grandma, and I don't stop them from seeing their dad. He can come around here and he can pick them up and take them places. He hasn't done that in quite some time, and one of mine doesn't want to speak to him at all, and that is okay with me, because it's her relationship with her father. I have nothing to do with it. Their father has always been able to come and visit if he wanted to. And the thing that made this particular child not want to speak to him is perfectly legitimate. But even if it wasn't, teenagers, especially teenagers on the verge of adulthood, do have thoughts and feelings that need to be honored, just like any other child. But as far as relationships with extended family goes, especially that. And, some adult children that have cut off their parents, or limited contact even, won't let, I know several that won't let their grandchildren be alone with their parents, because their parents insist that the child has to hug or kiss them, even if the child doesn't want to. That child deserves to have bodily autonomy. And if they don't want to be kissed, or they don't want to give you a kiss, that's their decision, and you need to honor it. And if you can't do that, then no, you're not going to be alone with the kids where I can't intervene, or my friends can't intervene and say, no, he or she or they don't have to do that. So these are actual issues. These aren't, oh, I didn't get an iPad when I wanted one, or, my mom didn't let me go to the biggest party of my teenage years. Now, a lot of these parents, too, will say things like, well, I raised them in a godly way. Well, that evidently is not how they see it, especially if you beat them in Jesus' name. That is not appropriate. And you can sit there and say all day long, oh, spanking is an abuse. That doesn't make it true. Just because you spout off about it doesn't make it true. And sure, it might have happened to you. That doesn't mean you had to pass abuse on to your children. And, the common argument of, well, it happened to me and I turned out fine. No, you didn't, if you think that it is appropriate to hit a child. So, you obviously didn't turn out okay. And, all these arguments, it doesn't matter. Actual legitimate studies have shown that spanking your children is more harmful. It's violence, and it's there's a whole lot more children that people that were spanked as children who were in prison for violent crimes than people who weren't, because they were taught at a very young age that violence is okay. If you're displeased with someone because they did something that you told them not to do, or you don't like, that you can hit people. So these children learn that violence is the way to solve problems, and they end up in prison. So if you're one of the people that thinks that, oh, all I did was spank my kids, you physically abuse them, and that's why they don't speak to you, and they don't have to, because they don't have to allow you to continue to change the narrative, to gaslight, to try and say, well, it's normal. No, it's not. It's not anymore. It's not appropriate. And you don't get to make that call. It's just one of those things. If your child is saying that a certain thing happened, it happened. And a lot of the women, like, there's one woman in particular, her name is Candy Morris, and she does a lot of content. She does a podcast, and she has content on Facebook. That's where I've seen it, and it just popped up in my feed. I didn't go looking for it. So Candy Morris will sit there and tell parents, yes, I know your child didn't tell you why they cut you off. I don't know either. And their therapist only has their side of the story, and people don't care about my side of the story. Bitch, your story is exactly why children cut their parents off. This woman married not one, not two, but 3 sex offenders. The final one that she married is a lifetime offender, like he's on the registry for life. And she allowed those husbands. Now, I'm sorry, you don't just date and marry 3 sex offenders by accident. Doesn't happen. You were okay with what they did. So, though at least one of those husbands harmed her son and her nephew, and so not only is she estranged from her son and her nephew, but she's not allowed to see her grandchild either, because her son won't bring her grandchild around. And she is on Facebook saying that she has no idea why, that there's 2 sides to every story. I don't need another side. You married 3 sex offenders. You allowed your son to be, messed with by at least one of these sex offender husbands. And then when the case went to court, you testified in favor of your husband. Why would your son continue to want a relationship with you? That's not the way this stuff works. It's just not. And maybe this would be a perfect segue into the Lindsay Clancy trial. Maybe I can cover both of those in this video. Lindsay Clancy's on trial for, she's admitted to murdering her children with, she strangled them with exercise bands, and now she is claiming that she was in psychosis, and that's why she did it. So I have some thoughts about that. But I'm going to say up front, I have absolutely zero respect for the idea that her husband was the one that actually murdered the kids and is now convincing her that she did it. Come on now. Just because she is a woman does not mean that other women have to look for a man to blame, because that seems to be what this is doing. She has claimed that she had postpartum psychosis, despite the fact that she didn't have a diagnosis of it at all. I think she had a diagnosis of postpartum depression, but depression and psychosis are 2 completely different things. I think it's very unethical, and it's just wrong to try and turn a murder trial into a diagnosis. That's not ethical to diagnose her as part of her murder trial, to get her in a mental health hospital for maybe 6 months and then a review. She could be there a little longer, but it won't be life in prison if the jury buys the whole psychosis story. Number one, she was doctor shopping. She says that she was begging for help with her mental health issues, but she kept going to different doctors who didn't know what meds she was prescribed by the other, because she would lie to each of these different doctors. And my opinion is she kept switching doctors because she didn't like the answer one would give her, so she went to the next one, didn't like the answer she was getting from that one, and so now she's trying to claim that she needed help she didn't get. This is a woman who was admitted to a psychiatric hospital and then checked herself out early for her daughter's birthday party. And I've had people come at me and say, well, as a mother, you would do the same thing. No, the fuck I would not. If I knew I needed help, if I was begging for help, and I was in the hospital, I would not check out of the hospital for a birthday party when I say I needed all this help. So, I have a problem with that. And when it comes to the doctor shopping and the being dishonest and the checking herself out of the hospital, whether she was in psychosis or not, to me, like when she murdered the children, no longer matters, because I feel like the fact that you rejected the help, the fact that you lied, and the fact that you kept shopping for different doctors to try and get what you wanted does make you criminally liable, because you were getting help, you just refused the help. So when it comes down to, is she liable for it even if she had psychosis? Yes, she is, because she made certain decisions that make her criminally liable. And there was premeditation in that crime. You cannot convince me there wasn't. She sent her husband out of the house to get food and meds, and she had obviously already put in thought under how she was going to kill her children, because it's not like it's not like 30 minutes before she sent her husband out, she just had this idea hit her in the middle of psychosis that she should go get those exercise bands and strangle her children. No, that is a very methodical, well thought out murder. That's not what you do if you're in psychosis. She thought through beforehand how she was going to do this. So I don't have any patience for the psychosis argument, because she doesn't even have a diagnosis, and the doctors that just testified said she did not have psychosis. She does not have psychosis. And honestly, if she had psychosis and it comes on and you can't tell when she's going to go into psychosis, but when she does, she's so dangerous that she murders people, she should be in the hospital for life, because evidently she's a danger to society. She could go into psychosis any minute and then she just kills people. So she's a real and present danger in society, is she not, if she really wants to take that psychosis thing and run with it. The other thing is, I'm frustrated that while we need to have some empathy and we need to think through things about mental health, that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change the fact that it was premeditated. It doesn't change the fact that she didn't have psychosis. It doesn't change any of that. So when you're trying to use a diagnosis she doesn't have to justify murdering 3 children, that doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. And the idea that the husband did it doesn't work for me either, because she's already admitted to doing it. And it's like, believe all women until they tell you something you don't like. We shouldn't be throwing, as women, we shouldn't be throwing our support behind somebody that deliberately murdered their children and now wants to pretend they had psychosis. Now, I can go along with the fact that she would have had postpartum depression, absolutely. But depression and psychosis are 2 different things, and people don't seem to understand that. They manifest in different ways. And there's plenty of women that have been in psychosis before that didn't murder anybody, so she still needs to take responsibility for her actions. At this point, I don't actually fucking care if she goes to a mental health hospital or to prison as long as she's there for life. The problem with the mental health hospital is she can get a review every year, I think it is. And so she may be out in 18 months, and that is just not appropriate. I believe in the state of Massachusetts, from what I've heard, if she goes to prison, it's an automatic life sentence, and it should be. She's either too dangerous to be in society, or she killed these kids for whatever reason. You know what? Some people are saying that her husband was cheating on her, all kinds of things. I don't care when it comes to the fact that she murdered her children. Now, I had a husband that cheated on me with, like, I mean, just random women, one night stands. He worked in a bar. He just slept with a bunch of women. I get how hurtful cheating is. It is not ever an excuse for murdering your children. Sorry, but it's not. And so when it comes to having empathy for her, the empathy has to go along with the responsibility for the crime. And I am sick and tired of other women trying to blame everybody and everything for Lindsay Clancy's actions except for Lindsay Clancy. Lindsay Clancy did what she did. I don't believe she had psychosis. Sure, she probably had depression. But, you know, you can't diagnose her with it after the fact and use a murder trial to do so. And so, I do believe it was a premeditated murder, and it's something that she needs to go away for the rest of her life. Either way, I would prefer to see her in prison because that's where she belongs. But if she somehow manages to get to be in the mental health hospital, then she just needs to fucking stay there. That's my view on it. And so I guess in the end, the whole estrangement and the Lindsay Clancy thing kind of did go together some. At least they did in my head. And as someone with dissociative identity disorder, and yes, I have an actual diagnosis. I was actually diagnosed, and then I got a second opinion who also diagnosed it. So, you know, sometimes my brain puts things together that other people don't necessarily put together. But that's what I have for all of you today. I hope you have a great evening. Bye.